Good morning, Milledgeville. It is Monday morning, so you know what that means. You have your Monday morning sports junkie live on WGUR 95.3 The Noise, broadcasting live from Milledgeville, Georgia, and also online at gcsuradio.com. You can click the listen live link to check that out. I'm starting to just a tad bit early here this morning. Just going to give you guys a quick rundown of what we got today. Talking some more college football, and that'll definitely be fun. Maybe get into a little NFL. Have a special guest coming. Jennifer Jacobs should be here a little later. Going to help me with the picks and things like that. We're going to talk about some of the stuff coming up next week. So, just a bit of exciting news. NBA training camp opens up tomorrow, and so that should add a little bit of variety with the training camp news. Injuries, hope not many of those happen, but with injuries and different things like that. Rumors and speculations. For the upcoming season, it'll be a fun time, definitely. So it'll add a little bit of variety to the show, and also just give you guys something else to focus on. Maybe get aside of so much football, but football's definitely been fun. Going to start off with some recap like we do every week. Georgia football. Georgia got absolutely pounded this weekend on the road at Ole Miss. Had to go to Oxford. Definitely a disappointing loss, considering we didn't even show up to play the football game to begin with and didn't have any fight in the first half. But you can't say it was unexpected for us to lose this one. Maybe you didn't expect us to lose in this fashion, but definitely couldn't say that it was completely unexpected and we were blindsided in this one. Same story, different week from the Dogs. Offensive line, defensive line never really got going, couldn't control the line of scrimmage, and Kirby Smart, coming from a successful program in Alabama, a successful SEC program, knows firsthand more than anyone that games in the SEC are won at the line of scrimmage. And really from there everything went downhill. You never really established any type of rhythm, and we never got any kind of rhythm offensively or defensively, and then struggled the rest of the way out. Didn't help us either with the drop balls, but Ole Miss really, they hurt us in areas where we're not very good, and then they seemed to hurt us in areas where we thought we were pretty good too. The secondary had trouble. Seemed like we were, a second late on just about everything Chad Kelly threw in the first half. He, put the ball, threw it up high to those big receivers, and they just went up and high-pointed the ball, pulled it down. And our safeties and corners weren't in bad position. It didn't seem like they were just using bad technique, or maybe not even bad technique, questionable technique on the bigger receivers when the ball got there. It seemed like, the touchdown pass where he avoided the sack by Lorenzo Carter, I believe, and threw it a mile down the field between two defenders. It seemed like, Jawan Briscoe was there. He was in front of the receiver. He just didn't turn his head. Got his hands up, did everything right, just didn't turn his head. And you got to use good technique when you're going against bigger guys, obviously. You got to use good technique against anyone. But, it just seemed like there were a couple times where we had a chance to hit a receiver right when he was going to catch the football, maybe knock it loose, and we pulled up. A couple times that happened, it seemed like. But the Ole Miss, they're a very good football team, not taking anything away from them, not saying that Georgia played bad and that's the reason they lost. Ole Miss beat us. They drug us through the mud on Saturday, and it just wasn't pretty. But, the drops, Georgia, you dropped 8% of all the balls thrown to you all year. And it's not gonna cut it. I mean, you had 4 drops on 36 attempts on Saturday. Wow, that's 11%. That's 1 out of every 9 passes you're throwing. And, with a young quarterback like Jacob Eason, even though he has all the talent in the world and has all the ability in the world, you got to catch the football when he throws it to you. There's no excuse for that. You got to do that for any quarterback. It doesn't matter if you have a 5th-year senior or you have a first-year quarterback guy in his 3rd career start like Jacob Eason. You have to catch the football. And it wasn't just, some other guys, some role players, maybe other freshmen dropping the football. If Isaac Nauta were dropping the football, or Charlie Warner, or really guys like that were dropping the football, maybe you might have a little more compassion. But it was guys like Isaiah McKenzie, his number 1 target, dropped 2 footballs, one of which would have been a touchdown in the first half on Saturday, in the red zone for that matter. Terry Godwin, another guy who you expect to step up and make plays, dropped the football on Saturday. Didn't really do too much to help the cause on Saturday. So you got to have those guys step up and make plays. There's no excuse for dropping the football. You have to catch it, especially when you're wide open. I mean, on all 3 of those throws, Eason made great reads. He threw 2 absolute dimes in the end zone, and 2 guys just didn't catch the football. It was as simple as that. So, Eason also sacked. He was only sacked once, but he was hurried 7 times. That can't happen. You got to keep the young guy off the ground. Can't let him get beat up and roughed up back there by opposing teams' defensive lines. But, honestly, this one sucked. You can't put it any other way. It was awful. It was just awful. There's no other way to put it. But you still have to move on. It's still a young team, and you didn't really have a chance of winning the SEC outright or making the playoff this year. Let's just go ahead and be real. Mark Richt, if you want to be mad at somebody, don't be mad at Kirby, don't be mad at Jacob Eason. You can get a little upset at these receivers and maybe the offensive line, but don't be mad at Kirby Smart especially. Mark Richt left this offensive line in a mess. There's no other way to put it. He didn't do this team a service in recruiting on the offensive line. I read an article that said he has signed, I believe, 3 guys in the Rivals top 250 recruits as offensive linemen, and in I believe the last 4 to 5 years, and I think Alabama signed 9. So looking at where we are from a recruiting standpoint and where they are, you can argue and say they're 3 times better than us, and you have a point. But Kirby Smart's going to get this group on the right track. Coming from Alabama. But looking on the bright side here, Jacob Eason is going to be a player. He stood in the pocket, I remember 3 times in the first half, and took shots just right under the chin. And like I said earlier, threw 3 dimes just right on the money to Terry Godwin and Isaiah McKenzie, and all 3 of them got dropped. Then we turned around and missed the field goal that would have given us maybe a little bit of life and made it, I believe, like 17 to 3 or something like that. We'd had a little bit of life. We'd have been kicking there early. But also the running backs, Brian Herring and Elijah Holyfield, they won't be too bad either going forward. Both guys ran hard. Brian Herring especially, I think he deserves more touches. I think you put him back there in the kick return game, and you take Reggie Davis and you put him on the bench because he's not doing a lot for you back there, and he's liable to drop the football as well. So I think you give Brian Herring some more touches, maybe put him in the kick return game, maybe go two deep return guys with him and McKenzie, and see what can happen back there with that. But also, I wouldn't mind seeing him in the backfield a little more as well. You throw Sony Michel out into the slot maybe because he's a very, very good pass catcher. Throw him out in the slot, and then you maybe line Chubb up at the fullback position or at the up back position rather as a fullback, and then put Herring back there and see if he can make some things happen and run the football well for you. I think that would be it'd be pretty cool to see that. It'd be nice to see some variety in the offense, but I think we'll see some changes made obviously going forward. Nick Chubb supposedly has the sprained ankle, so questionable for this week. I'm sure he'll go against Tennessee, being the magnitude that game has. But it'll be interesting to see what happens back there at the running back position, and then looking forward, what do they have to do to improve? Same story, different week. O-line, you got to be able to run the football. You got to protect Jake Eason. He's the guy. Can't have him on the ground 10 times a game. It's just not going to work. The secondary's got to get better as well, but I don't doubt that it will. Kirby Smart played in the secondary in college. Mel Tucker is a very, very good defensive mind and is our defensive coordinator. So I think between those two, that secondary will improve. It will get better. And other than that, I mean, you're going to take your lumps this year. There are going to be games where we look like that. We come out and get absolutely thumped. Then there's going to be a couple of big games where we may come out, we may compete, and we're going to look like we belong among the SEC elite. But for things to get better, they may get a little worse. I still think we can win 7, 8 games this year easily. But some people are saying we're going to win 6 games. There's a trap game right there with Vanderbilt later in the season. But I think things are going to get better going forward, obviously. But you got to build up from the mess Mark Richt left your offensive line, your defensive line, your linebackers. And, you have these guys who are supposed to be bona fide pass rushers at the linebacker, and they can't get to the quarterback. Guys like Lorenzo Carter, a very, very talented guy, but not as strong in the run game as he needs to be, not an every down linebacker. So you're going to have to wait and get those guys in who can be every down linebackers, who can make plays. I think you have one now in Roquan Smith. He's a very, very solid football player. I think he's just got to grow. Didn't play a lot last year, and I think this year's going to be a bit of a learning curve for him, and he's gonna have to learn and play. But with that being said, everybody's talking, SEC championship. But there's obviously still a way. I think that path to the SEC championship and SEC East title starts this weekend. If you're Georgia, you lost to Ole Miss. Okay, you got beat down by Ole Miss. Okay, but what have you really lost? I mean, Tennessee's going to have at least one loss going forward in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Florida's still got a tough schedule. Everyone else has a tough schedule on your side, and really you're looking at a 3-horse race. If you're Georgia, between you, Florida, and Tennessee, if you handle business with those two, you're in good shape. Easier said than done, obviously, but I think you got to handle business there. You got to take care of a scrappy Auburn bunch, and handle Tech at the end of the year. But you could lose 3 or 4 games, like I said, but it's not over till it's over. The fat lady hasn't sung yet, so there's no reason to lose hope in this team. And so I think going forward, you have a very good shot at making some noise in the SEC, and at least putting your name in there and showing that you're not going to go down without a fight. So moving forward here, another very, very good game this weekend. Tennessee and Florida, true tale of two halves. Florida really dominated the first half, but Tennessee, they wouldn't go away, rallied for 38 unanswered in this football game. Josh Dobbs was, a force in the second half. He was the type of player that a lot of people expected him to be coming into the season. In every other game, the defense was inspired. Even without Cameron Sutton, Jalen Reeves-Maben played a few snaps, but didn't really have the effect on this game at the linebacker position that a lot of people thought he could and would have in this game. And Tennessee, how did they pull it off? I mean, Florida, they faded, and Tennessee just took advantage. Florida really faded defensively. They made Josh Dobbs look like this pocket passer, Aaron Rodgers type in the game. He was finding receivers wide open down the seams and down the sideline. Dobbs finished 16 for 32, 319 yards with 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Isn't not a terrible stat line considering who he is and who he is as a passer. He also ran for 86 yards. Had 2 or 3 very tough runs. Kind of impressed me. I didn't think he would be willing to lower his shoulder, but I guess when you have his skill set in that offense, you have to kind of turn yourself into more of a running back at times. You have to be a running back. Tennessee, they never got the run game going with their running backs. Even though Jalen Hurd finished with 96 yards in this one, no touchdowns for him, I don't believe, but still a solid day, I guess. But Tennessee, they may be the, I think, ugliest team, winning team in the SEC, but they win. I mean, you can't discount that. And for a team that's had the struggles they've had in the past, 5, 6, 8 years with the Lane Kiffin saga, and then Derek Dooley, and the Butch Jones coming in and really trying to turn this program around. It's they're living under the premise, a win's a win, and that's what they're gonna stick by it, and they're gonna hold fast to it, because really looking forward, that's all they've got. They're really playing for respect this year, trying to make a name for themselves and really grow going forward. So looking up, looking at the other side of the ball here. How good is Florida? Last week, a couple weeks ago, I praised Florida and said I thought they were the best team in the SEC East. Were the team to beat, and I still think they're the best team in the SEC East when fully healthy. Appleby didn't play bad, obviously, but he just didn't have the same effect. He wasn't as able to distribute the ball as Luke Del Rio had been in that offense under Jim McElwain, and not as efficient in the passing game. And so, begs the question, are they still the favorite in the East? I never thought there was a clear-cut favorite. I thought after the Kentucky game it was Florida. After this weekend, I guess you can say it's Tennessee. After next weekend, you may turn around and say it's Georgia. So, I think it's still wide open. We still got a long ways to go in this thing, and there's really no way to predict that right now. I think it's going to come down to, obviously this weekend coming up, will be a big game with Georgia and Tennessee. Then you got Georgia, Florida in a month, and so you can't make that judgment right now. I think you got to just sit back and watch it unfold, and then make some predictions in the coming future. But looking forward here again, LSU Auburn, another big SEC game. LSU knocks off Auburn LSU nearly knocks off Auburn on the last play, but go into the official review. Officials look at it up top, look at it at the replay center in Birmingham, I believe, and it comes back that that the play did not stand because the center did not snap the football in time, and this ultimately cost Les Miles his job. 1 second cost Les Miles his job, essentially. And looking at the game overall, not too great of a game. Well, kind of a snooze fest in my opinion. Neither team was really able to get it going offensively, and it really just kind of spiraled downhill from there. It kind of came down to whichever offense sputtered the least. Like I said last week, I thought it would come down to that. And Auburn couldn't put the ball in the end zone, but LSU really struggled between the 20s as well. Couldn't even get into field goal range for most of the game. Really struggled with the play calling. Cam Cameron trying to get cute when he should have just went with the obvious play. Should have gone with being too vanilla when he should have diversified the offense and done some things. So it just kind of turned into one of those games. And then, Auburn, the situation they're in and where they are offensively. I think Auburn is content to kick field goals and try to win with its defense, and that's kind of a disappointment considering Gus Malzahn is an offensive guy. You'd think his offense would be better, and I think it's a direct correlation with his offensive coordinator. He needs to cut ties with Rhett Lashley. I think that may be the answer for them going forward if Malzahn is retained to go in the offseason, which I'm not sure if he will be either. But how and why did this game get the way, that it did? Well, it's just kind of a calamity of the past few years. It came down, like I said, to which offense stuttered the least. So, in my outline, I made the outline Saturday night. I said, is this the end of the road for LSU, Les Miles and Cam Cameron? And it ultimately proved to be the end of the road. I thought Les Miles was fired unfairly. I thought, what benefit do you have from firing him now as opposed to firing him last year? Or what's the benefit of doing it now as opposed to waiting until the end of the season? I think it was emotional, trying to appease some fans rather than a logical one. You made that decision with your heart, not your head. But you really can't argue with it. I don't guess. I think maybe the more rational decision would have been to get rid of Cam Cameron. He's the one calling the plays, not Les Miles, and your offense really is the issue. You've got a first-year defensive coordinator in Dave Aranda, and he really hasn't had a chance to put his mark on this program yet. He's a very, very good defensive coordinator, and it'll be interesting to see if a new head coach decides to retain him at LSU, which I think would be a very, very good move. But we're going to have a little bit more talking about the Les Miles situation later. When Jen gets here, we'll get a little deeper into that, talk about where Les Miles heads next and what direction LSU may take next. But looking at these two teams in the long term, who's in better shape? I guess you got to say Auburn. They're really, two teams who really bolstered the SEC's depth. And, even though if they weren't the best team in the West or in the conference, they were still a team, who was going to come out and compete every week, had, bona fide, very, very good players, and was able to win games and do things of that nature. So I think, both of these teams are now middle of the road. I mean, Auburn, a shell of what they were with Cam Newton, Nick Marshall, guys like that. And then, LSU was still a shell of their former selves, even from last year, in the beginning of last year with Leonard Fournette running all over defenses and really just dominating the game in all facets. So it'll be interesting going forward to see where these two programs head. I think both are in dire need of an intervention, need a turnaround, and really need to get things back on the right track going forward for their sakes and for the sake of the conference. But we're going to take a quick break. We're going to have a little bit more college football recap. Going to look out west and maybe get into a couple more SEC games here. We have Disclosure with Latch coming at you guys, and I'll be right back. What's up, guys? We are back. This is your Monday Morning Sports Junkie on WGUR 95.3 The Noise. I'm coming to you live from Milledgeville, Georgia. We are also on Periscope at 953_highlight as well. Check us out there if you want. I'm trying to get the camera set up right now. So yeah, we're back. Got a little bit more college football preview for you guys. UCLA, Stanford. Stanford slips away from UCLA. They barely get out of there with a win, and UCLA, really played well in this one. They matched Stanford in time of possession, yards gained. Won the turnover battle 2-1. But Ryan Burns was just able to throw a touchdown pass with 24 seconds left, and Josh Rosen couldn't get his team in field goal position. But, the bright side of this game, don't want to stay on this too long. We got a few more minutes before we get Jen in the studio. But, the bright side of this one for Pac-12 teams, you may have found some blueprint for how to neutralize Christian McCaffrey, or at least slow him down. I think UCLA showed that they can compete as well. And if you heard Josh Rosen, he said that they would see this team again in the Pac-12 championship game. And he's a guy who I believe doesn't make idle comments, idle threats. So I think for the rest of the Pac-12, you better watch out for UCLA. They're coming with a vengeance, and I think they do have a realistic shot of seeing Stanford again and maybe ruining their college football playoff and national title hopes. But moving back east, looking one more time in the SEC, A&M and Arkansas. A&M maybe the surprise of the season. Nobody really expected a ton out of them, having lost the 2 5-star quarterbacks to transfer in the offseason, and then getting the Oklahoma reject in Trevor Knight, who does have a win over Alabama in his career. Keep that in mind. But A&M rolled over Arkansas. I thought Arkansas was gonna put up a little bit better fight in this one. They led early, and A&M bounced back. Trevor Knight took this game over. He was one of those athletes that I predicted last week would take over for A&M, and he did. 12 of 22, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, ran for 157 yards and 2 scores. He was their leading rusher. So that's a consummate all-around great day and great effort. Great to see him use his legs and be comfortable in the pocket, as well as throw the ball in someone's offense. Great to see they didn't have happy feet. He was, very comfortable back there. So it begs the question, can A&M challenge Alabama? And they seem, like the only team in the conference, I think, with the ability to do it. They have the 2 best defensive ends in the nation, the best pass rush combo in Myles Garrett and Deshaun Hall. Also have a very prolific offense led by Trevor Knight and Speedy Noel. And I can't wait to see the matchup. It's going to be high-quality football. 2 teams that are very, very good. 2 SEC teams going to, I hope, go at it, both undefeated. And this one will be for a shot in the SEC championship game, and maybe even a shot, with a college football playoff berth on the line. I think it'll be very exciting to see, and it'll definitely be a game that'll garner national attention and be a game that a lot of people will be watching very, very closely. So, moving forward here, one last thing before we get into our weekly picks. Georgia fans, I'm going to talk directly to you guys right now. I'm seeing a lot of people out there saying, we need to get rid of Kirby Smart already. Is Kirby the guy? Questioning him, questioning the staff, questioning guys like that. You have to trust the process. And I know it sounds cliched, and I know it's not what you want to hear right now, but a dynasty is not built overnight. An article here from dogsports.com, saw it on Facebook actually, from or if you're familiar with the show, my partner from the past couple years, Kyle, shared this, and I thought it was worth mentioning as part of Goodreads here. We're going to jump into that real quick, but you have Jacob Eason. They call him the second coming of Jesus Christ in this thing. We got Kirby Smart. We have Nick Chubb, but we aren't Alabama yet. Is the whole premise of this article. You got Alabama's defensive coordinator, the right hand man, but you're not Alabama. Nick Saban was 7-6 in his first year at Alabama. He lost to UL Monroe. Pete Carroll was 6-6 in his first year at USC. One of the best coaches in the game right now, I think. Vince Dooley was even 7-3 in his first year at Georgia. So you can't expect a dynasty to be built overnight. And, this thing, it goes back to that 2013 recruiting class that was built under, surprise, surprise, Mark Richt. Was the 12th best in the nation at the time, but now, you had 33 guys. 15 members have either transferred or aren't even enrolled at UGA right now, and the five of those guys are on UGA. Reggie Davis, Quincy Mauger, John Atkins have been out of the of those guys. Those guys have been out of the starting lineup, in and out. So there's no continuity. There's no top-down leadership there right now. And then the offensive line, maybe the worst one we've had in the last 15 years. And Mark Richt, there's one place that you really killed this program. He did a very good job, but you really killed this program up front when you left. He signed a total of 3 offensive linemen ranked in the Rivals 250. Mentioned that earlier. Alabama signed 9 in the same time span. Tyler Catalina is your left tackle, the highest paid position in the NFL. So that just tells you the importance that it garners and it has. Not a bad player by any stretch, obviously, but he's a second-team player in the Colonial Athletic Association. he's the starter, and now he's the starting left tackle for going against defensive ends of the caliber of Myles Garrett and guys like that. I mean, you know, he's not a bad player, but is he really the guy you want protecting the blind side of a guy like Jacob Eason in the SEC? I mean, it's not a bad pickup by Kirby, not a bad, you know, at the time he was hired, and, you know, they did a great job with late roster management getting guys like that, but at the same time, he's not the best at the position, you know, not the guy that you want there, you know, at all times, I don't think. But, you know, then you're looking at your receivers, your top 3 receivers, Reggie Davis, Terry Godwin, and Isaiah McKenzie. Only guy on that in that group that maybe over 100 yards on the season in a game is Isaiah McKenzie. All of them are under 6 feet tall and under 185 pounds. But after you watch Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, even A&M, you know, I don't think they have a top receiver, a notable receiver under 6'1", 6 or 6'2", and 185 pounds. I mean, every one of those teams would take, you know, Isaiah McKenzie, Terry Godwin. I'm not sure about Reggie Davis, but every one of those teams will take 2 of those guys, especially Isaiah McKenzie. He's a very, very good football player, but he's not a number 1 receiver. He's not a guy that's going to go on the outside and be able to take the top off the defense. And I said last week, I know that you don't have to have a true number 1, but you have to have a guy with size who can take the top off the defense to be a threat. Tom Brady has it, Russell Wilson has it, and Doug Baldwin. Brady has it in Edelman, and Amendola had it in Wes Welker before. Even though they weren't the biggest guys, they could still stretch the field, and that's what we lack. Even though McKenzie can do it at times, he's not a threat to do it every play, and that's the problem. And also, if you look at you know, the quarterbacks that quarterback those teams without a true number 1, you know, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, you know, they're great. Russell Wilson, one of the better players in the game right now. Tom Brady, arguably the greatest ever. You know, you can get away with things like that. And then, you know, special teams, another one on Mark Richt. He recruited and offered Rodrigo Blankenship a scholarship, wanted him to be Marshall Morgan's replacement, and you see how that's going. I don't know if we've made a field goal all year. You know, but, you know, there is a solution, maybe. He's on campus. This article suggests that Bryce Ramsey may be the guy to step in and, you know, make field goals for us. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it. He didn't even travel with the team last weekend, kind of an under the radar thing. They dressed a walk-on as the third quarterback, but you know, you got to be better in the kicking game. And maybe Bryce Ramsey, a guy, you know, they called him the Golden Boot in high school, you know, made 50-plus yarders he was rumored to have made. And then your secondary, wow. You know, thought it was the best group on the team, and you're pretty good there. A couple guys that fit the mold of good SEC secondaries: tall, lanky corners, you know, athletic, ball hawking, hard hitting safeties. You have a couple guys: Dominic Sanders, you know, Aaron Davis are the ones that come to mind. But that's not enough. You need 3-4 more guys. You know, Rico McGraw is a guy who Alabama actually recruited, has dealt with some injuries. Look forward to seeing him get back in the mix in the coming weeks. But, you know, Roscoe Parrish, a guy with good size, but he's 5'9". But, you know, he's 5'9". The guy's lining up is sometimes, you know, 7 inches taller than him. And, you know, Jawan Briscoe, a guy who made some plays in the Missouri game, but, you know, we could go on and on about why he isn't a guy to have there. But, you know, that's some stuff, that's some of the gloomy stuff. The reason why we're probably not gonna win the SEC this year. I'm not gonna say we're not, but we're probably not gonna win the SEC this year. It took, you know, Saban 3 years. 3 years at Bama. Give Kirby Smart 3 years. Give him till the 2018 season, and you'll see the turnarounds. You'll see the fruits, and you'll start seeing this thing pan out. You got another top tier 5-star quarterback coming in Jake Fromm next year, and you know, even if Eason isn't the guy to get you there and win the title, you have plenty of guys coming in there going to help you. So everybody, you know, the Georgia fans need to take a deep breath and breathe back out and just relax. That's the biggest thing. Just got to relax. Just got to give this thing some time. So I'm going to take one more quick break, and I have Jennifer in the studio with me now. So after this break, we'll start doing some college football picks.
You know what's better than listening to WGUR 95.3 The Noise? Well, whenever I figure that out, I'll let you know. In the meantime, stick around and listen to your heart's content. WGUR 95.3 The Noise.
What's up, guys? We're back. I have Jennifer in the studio with me.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, thank you for being here bright and early with us this morning, Jennifer. You know, we couldn't have done it without you. But we're going to go ahead and jump into some college football previews, some, you know, looking at the games next weekend. Got some good games, I think, next weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Stanford and Washington, I'm going to lead off with them, I guess. But a big game in the Pac-12. I think Washington can definitely make a statement. They're ranked, I think, number 9 right now in the AP, and they have a lot of hype around them. You know, a lot of people think they're a sleeper team to make the playoff, but Stanford just keeps on rolling. They keep showing that keep trying to prove that the Pac-12 is theirs. So, you know, Jennifer, what are you thinking about this one?
I think both of these teams are really good. Washington really has surprised a lot of people. They do have the home advantage this weekend, but when you look at it, Washington really hasn't played any super strong teams. They faced Arizona this past week and obviously got the win, but that's probably the toughest team they've faced yet. And they did perform well, but Stanford is going to give them a rude awakening. Along with Utah, California, and Oregon. I mean, Oregon isn't really having the season that everybody thought they would, but I feel like when Oregon's going to play Washington, and I'm pretty sure it's at Oregon, it's just going to give Washington a really hard season. And despite Stanford kind of like, well, that Stanford-UCLA game this past weekend was absolutely
great.
Like amazing. But they didn't look too hot this past weekend. Stanford didn't. But I do think Stanford is going to win. They're a strong team. And Christian McCaffrey. That's all. He's going to have a great game. And they're going to give Washington the taste of actually competing with these top 10 teams. But right now, I looked last night, 60% of the people are picking Washington to win this weekend.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to go against these 60% of people, and I think I'm going to go ahead and pick Stanford to win. Stanford knows how to compete with these big teams. Washington really hasn't had any experience with doing this kind of whole top 10 thing. So I really like Stanford this weekend.
Yeah, I think Christian McCaffrey, he's going to challenge the Washington defense, and he's an absolute beast. Going to be a load to stop. And the Washington defense, they're not bad. They're only giving up about 14.5 points a game, but they give up 158 yards on the ground. But Christian McCaffrey gets 214 yards a game on the ground. So something's going to have to give there, obviously. Mm-hmm. And Washington's, you know, they're good on offense. They get 45 points a game, and Stanford only averages 25. So if the Stanford defense can't get stops and Washington's does, you know, it could be a tough day for the Cardinals. But, you know, Washington's wins, 3 of them have come against Portland, Idaho State, and Rutgers. Arizona's not a bad team in the Pac-12. They have a solid quarterback, solid run game under Rich Rodriguez, but they're not going to win the thing.
Right.
So in the national this one in the national conversation has huge implications, and you know, if this is a good game, the Pac-12 earns a little bit of legitimacy as a conference as well. The Pac-12, a conference, a lot of people think it's going to be left out of the playoff, and it's kind of that the 5th best of the Power 5 conferences. I think this game could go a long way in showing how good the Pac-12 is, and maybe even getting them in the conversation of having a playoff team. But I think Stanford's going to be too much in this one. I think it'll be a high-scoring game. But I think Christian McCaffrey's going to dominate the game, be somewhere around 300 all-purpose yards, and you know, I think Stanford takes it pretty close. It's on a Friday night as well, so both teams getting a short week. But I think Stanford takes this one not fairly easily, but they take this one from Washington.
Yeah.
So moving forward here, Texas, Oklahoma State, Big 12 matchup, a pretty good one, I think. Two Big 12 teams that aren't great. You know, they're in the middle of the road. Oklahoma State, they're 2 weeks removed from that officiating catastrophe and the loss to Central Michigan. And Texas is just trying to keep some positive momentum rolling. And, you know, Charlie Strong's 3rd year, I believe, as the head coach. Already got a big win, got that signature win in the first week, and this one will go a long way in showing how far Charlie Strong has brought this team. You know, Mike Gundy has a solid offense, and Texas is they're gonna force Texas to score points. So you know, who are you taking in this one?
Oklahoma State, they really aren't looking too hot right now. They lost to Central Michigan in week 2, which was a bummer and totally the officiating's fault, but also really awesome to see that upset. And this week, they took a really hard loss to Baylor. Texas, like you said, they pretty much shocked the world in week 1 with beating Notre Dame, but let's be honest, Duke beat Notre Dame this weekend. They had an easy game against UTEP in week 2, took an upset against Cali in week 3, and had a bye week in this past week in week 4. So with all the given above, I'm going to go ahead and pick Texas to win this game, just because really they had this whole week to prepare, and they had the week to actually watch Oklahoma State play against Baylor. So it's not like they were playing a cupcake team. Granted, they were playing Baylor. so kind of got to see everything that's going to be going on. But I think I'm just going to go ahead and go with Texas in this one. Oklahoma State does have the home field advantage. But this game screams Texas.
Yeah, I really like Texas in this one too. Texas can score points. They're averaging 44.7 points a game, and I really like the job Charlie Strong is doing with Texas this year with Shane Buechele, a true freshman quarterback, and then you use Gerard Swoops in that offense as well, and then you have just all the other factors rolling in that game. Texas's defense isn't as bad as some people like to think it is. They didn't show up in week 1 against Notre Dame, but have had some time to adjust. Charlie Strong is a very good defensive mind, and he did have very good defenses up at Louisville. So I'm going to stick with Texas in this one too. I think that offense just may be a little too much for Oklahoma State to keep up with. They're going to score points, obviously, but Mike Gundy, his teams have had a history of just collapsing on bigger stages and even small stages like they did against Central Michigan. That game never should have been as close as it was, and even though they should have won the football game, it
shouldn't have come down to that.
Yeah, it shouldn't have come down to that. They shouldn't have been in that situation. And give credit to Central Michigan. They ran the perfect play. I mean, it was a play that you practice it that way, and that's the way it fell out for them. So you gotta take that into account, obviously, but at the same time, I think Texas is clearly the better team. But jumping forward here, looking at some Big Ten football, Michigan and Wisconsin, a game that at the beginning of the season I would have written off and said doesn't matter, who cares, Michigan probably wins it. But after 4 weeks, I am wrong, and we have to look at this one a little more closely. Michigan is ranked, I think, number 3 or 4 in the nation. Wisconsin came into the season unranked. That's why I thought this one would just be kind of written off. Thought they'd get bounced in week 1 against LSU. Thought they'd have another loss against Michigan State. And Wisconsin's undefeated. Had the struggle with Georgia State, obviously, but every team seems like has struggled with a small opponent. So this is Michigan's first real test. They've beat teams like Colorado, UCF, and Hawaii. They played someone else as well. But Wisconsin, it's their chance to show that they're legit. They're for real on probably a national stage. Probably get a late kickoff there for that one. And so, who do you got in this one? I think it'll be good.
This one is actually going to be probably one of the games you're actually going to want to watch this weekend. Wisconsin walked all over Michigan State this past weekend. They look really good. They're finally starting to get in the swing of things. And by the swing of things, I mean in the top 25. More like the top 10. And like you said, Michigan really, they've had it easy this season so far. And they're going to be facing a really good Wisconsin team. It's probably the first time Michigan's seen competition. This is going to be a really hard game. But I think I like Wisconsin in it. It's going to be a very close game. Wisconsin is finally proving to everyone. I was honestly, at the beginning of the season, I was very surprised to see Wisconsin wasn't in the top 25, just because they've always had a really good football program. So with that, I think I actually am going to go with Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Even though I said I like Michigan in this game. But upon further review, I like Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think Michigan, we know what Michigan has potential to be and under Jim Harbaugh and all that stuff. That they have the hype train rolling and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, you got to still play football. You can't win games on hype alone. Mm-hmm. And, Wisconsin, numbers-wise, they weren't too impressive against Michigan State. They did force 4 turnovers, had 3 interceptions of Tyler O'Connor, a guy that I thought was actually a pretty good quarterback up there at Michigan State. But Michigan, they got to get after the new quarterback at Wisconsin. Alex Hornibrook came in I believe the Georgia State game, second half of the Georgia State game, won that football game, and they benched Bart Houston. They stuck with Hornibrook in the Michigan State game, and Michigan State, they didn't get after him. The defensive line didn't come after him, and I said he lit him up. 16 for 26, 195 yards, a touchdown and an interception. I don't guess that defines lighting a defense up, but he was still better than average, and he got the job done. And Michigan also has to stop Corey Clement. He didn't have a great day against Michigan State. He's only getting about 85 yards a game, but he's a very, very good running back. One of the, I think, the better backs in the nation right now. He just doesn't have the numbers to show for it, but I still think he's a solid runner. And Wisconsin has a chance to stop the Michigan hype and put Jim Harbaugh right in his place. Tell him he's not the best team in the Big Ten. He's not even he's not a top 4 team in the nation, and he needs to sit down and go somewhere with his attitude, because I'm not a big Jim Harbaugh fan. But
I don't think a lot of people are.
I mean, I've picked against the Badgers twice this year, and picking against the Badgers, I'm 0-2. So there is no better time for me to join the bandwagon than right now. Picking against Jim Harbaugh, I'm taking Wisconsin in the upset. A lot of people feel like it would be an upset if Wisconsin won. I'm not sure about that. I think Wisconsin's a pretty good football team. Not sure if they're as good as their ranking states that they are, but I think Wisconsin's got a shot in this one, and I'm going to take them in the upset, in this one. So looking at the Big 12 here, going to go for one more game before we take a quick break. TCU, Oklahoma. A big game in terms of the Big 12 standings. Obviously, both teams probably out of the playoff contention, but a big one in terms of conference prestige and recruiting. Always good to see when you play games in conference. If they're good games, number one, and the winner gets a bit of an edge in recruiting. And this one's big. TCU, Oklahoma, TCU and Texas. Obviously, they're recruiting from the same areas and trying to pull the same guys. So it'll be an interesting game to see how this one goes down. So who do you like in this one?
I have one comment under this game, and it's that TCU is going to absolutely wreck Oklahoma. Oklahoma has really done absolutely nothing to prove that they're somewhat of a decent football team right now. I mean, I think week one just kind of did it for them, and they took the upset by somebody else. I can't remember who it was.
Ohio State wrecked.
Ohio State just absolutely destroyed them. TCU is just going to win this game. It's at Oklahoma, but that doesn't mean anything because Houston traveled. Oh, no, that was a home game for Houston. But neither one of these teams really, TCU, they've always had this hype about them for the past, 3 years, I think it is, being in the top 4. And everyone's argued TCU really doesn't play anybody, just like in Iowa. But I like TCU in this game. Oklahoma doesn't really even deserve to win it. Not after the season, the past 4 weeks. They just don't deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma, they're not playing very good football right now. They've struggled in 2 of the 4 weeks. I think they're sitting at 2-2, or maybe even 1-2. I'm not sure if they who they played last week and if they won. But Kenny Hill has been huge for TCU. Does a lot of work for them. TCU's defense has struggled this year. It's not as good as it's been in the past. And Oklahoma's not as good as they were last year defensively either. But they still have Baker Mayfield, Samaje Perine, Joe Mixon, and it may come down to whichever defense can bend but not break or get a stop late, or it may even come down to which offense has the ball last. I think TCU, this one's going to be high scoring, but I think TCU does have a bit of an advantage. Their defense, I think, is better than Oklahoma's by a hair, with Gary Patterson coaching them up there. And so I picked Oklahoma twice, and they've let me down twice. I'm 0-2 picking Oklahoma, so I'm going to pick against them right here. I think TCU does have a shot, they have a shot because they're more balanced than Oklahoma. They have 3, even though Oklahoma does have 3 complete game breakers in their backfield in Mayfield, Perine, and Mixon, but they just haven't found a way to get them all involved in a way that is very fluid. So I think TCU is going to win a close, high-scoring game in this one. So we're going to take a quick break right here. We got some more preview coming up for you guys next, so stay tuned for that. And we may even talk a little bit more about the Les Miles drama in college football. So stay tuned.
Drama.
And we'll be right back.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Why go to the movie theater's lobby when you can listen to WGUR 95.3?
What's up? We are back. We have a few more games to pick for you guys, and then we got some more college football talk here just for you guys this morning. So going to jump right back in. Miami and Georgia Tech. Big game for Jennifer, being a big Hurricanes fan over here. But, I personally hope they both lose.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
So, got Mark Richt on one sideline, got Georgia Tech on the other. Two teams I could really care less about, to be honest with you. So,
you shouldn't.
Well, whatever. But Jennifer, who you have in this one?
I think it's absolutely no question of who I have, but let me make my arguments. Okay, this game is going to be hype. It's at 12 o'clock. You'll find me on the AT&T parking deck, up tailgating on the top deck with all my Miami Hurricane fans. Miami's taking on their first ACC team this season. They've looked really good in their first 3 games. They had a bye week this week. Mark Richt has been taking on Georgia Tech for a long time. And if anybody should have the triple option down, it should be Mark Richt, for sure. Miami's always had a little bit of that problem with the triple option. I think it was, 2 years ago when Miami came back to Georgia Tech. Miami did not look good. But we also had Al Golden. Miami is a whole new team, and they're about to prove to a lot of ACC teams that this is their year. And teams should be scared to play them. Granted, it's at Georgia Tech, but that doesn't mean anything for Georgia Tech having the home field advantage because Clemson kind of handed it to them last week. So I'm going to take Miami. I'm really excited for this game. It's really going to be good. I'm excited to see how Miami's going to perform against an ACC team because then they have a bunch of games back to back to back to back that are ACC. I know next weekend they take on Florida State, but guess who has a home field advantage? And it's not easy to play in Miami. So I got Miami.
Yeah.
And they're ranked 14th now.
Yeah, like I said, I hope they both lose, but, there's one factor playing to Georgia Tech's advantage, I believe. 2 factors, actually. One of them is that they are at home, and the other is that you never know what Mark Richt is going to do when he goes to Bobby Dodd Stadium.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had games where the defense has looked great. We've dominated at Bobby Dodd when he was at Georgia, and then, there are games where he's, looked like doesn't even know what the triple option is. Like, it's this offensive secret that Georgia Tech just decided to bust out, but they've been doing it all year. I still think Miami may be the better team, but depending on how this game folds out, and I think Tech's going to keep it close late. And originally I thought Miami was going to win a close one, but thinking about it, and I don't normally pick Georgia Tech or even root for them for that matter.
Oh.
But I'm gonna flip the script a little bit here. I'm gonna say that Tech is gonna upset Miami. I think that triple option attack is going to be just a bit too much for the Miami Hurricanes, even though it's not as good as it was a couple seasons ago when you had Justin Thomas and a group of veterans in the backfield. I do think that Tech has a very good shot. I'm gonna go ahead and pick Tech in the upset.
Oh no, it's Rec Tech week.
And I'm gonna say it's not quite Rec Tech week for Georgia fans. I think we're gonna put that off for a couple more weeks, and I'm gonna say Tech's gonna maybe have a shot in this one. I'll take Tech in this one, in a very, very close one though.
We'll see because Brad Kaya, let me tell you, Brad Kaya, it's like Mark Richt just like reformed Brad Kaya as a quarterback. Brad Kaya was not a bad quarterback when Al Golden was there, but it's like Mark Richt came in and he did something because Brad Kaya looks so strong. We have multiple receivers, and I think that's something that Miami didn't have 2 years ago. We had Phillip Dorsett, we had Duke Johnson, and we had a bunch of smaller guys that would kind of pop in in and out, but I think Miami, we just have too many options. There's no such thing as too many options. We have so many options, which that should scare Georgia Tech. But don't get me wrong, I am scared about the triple option. It's a little scary. Yeah,
it's a scary thing to go up against. But Brad Kaya, going back to your point about Brad Kaya, he's looked his best, I'd say, against Florida A&M and Florida Atlantic. I think 2 schools who aren't, you would say they're not going to blow the doors off of anybody. So I think he's expected to look good in the games they've played thus far, and didn't noticed this earlier, but Miami did have a week off last week, so they got 2 weeks to prepare for the option. So I think that will play into it. They're going to exclusively sit down and really look at that. But they probably looked at Florida State a little bit too. Probably talked about some things that they can do against the triple option that you can also do against Florida State to really use that to try and tune up. So maybe you'll catch Miami looking ahead if you're Tech as well. Teams like to do a lot of stuff in those bye weeks and those off weeks at practice and things of that nature. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think it'll be close, and I think it'll definitely be one of the better games this upcoming weekend for the Hurricanes and Georgia Tech. So
ESPN2 at 12 o'clock.
So looking forward a little bit here, North Carolina comes in taking on Florida State, a team that's kind of on its heels right now after getting just throttled a couple weeks ago by Louisville and then giving up a ton of points to USF this past weekend. So a game that I think is going to be, it won't be a terrible game. I do think Florida State's going to come out with a win. But
Yep.
what are you thinking about this one?
Okay, so both of these teams are good ACC teams. Carolina, they're ready for this game, and they know FSU is weak. FSU, they're so weak. They're really still hurt, I'm telling you, about that loss to Louisville, because that's an ACC team. So it's at Florida State. I'm going to go ahead and go with North Carolina, because Florida State, they're tired of everyone talking about that loss, because seriously, like, Louisville made history and at FSU with how many points they scored on them.
Yeah, it got ugly.
So FSU, they're out for blood. So I think North Carolina should be really scared. It's going to be a good game. Don't get me wrong, but I hate picking Florida State. But Florida State's gonna win this game.
Yeah, I think Florida State, they're tired of getting talked down to, tired of being that team that everybody kind of looks at sideways now after that big loss to Louisville. But I think Louisville's just a very good team, and I think Florida State's going to show you how good Louisville was after they put it on North Carolina this weekend. Carolina, you got to find a way to stop Bug Howard and Ryan Switzer, two very, very dynamic playmakers in Larry Fedora's offense. And then, the Seminoles, but I think the Seminoles have the greatest advantage in their backfield, Dalvin Cook, one of the better running backs in the nation. And, Carolina is abysmal against the run. 222 versus Nick Chubb in week 1, and since then it hasn't gotten much better. Tied for 120th out of 128 eligible teams in the FBS in rush defense, and Florida State is 15th in the nation in rush offense. That's not a good combination. Plus they have a great mobile quarterback in DeAndre Francois. They don't use him a lot in the run game, but I think they may look to incorporate that because Carolina struggles so much there. And if Carolina, it's simple. If Carolina can stop the run, they'll have a chance. If they can't, and I don't think they can, Florida State's going to run away with this one. I think Florida State has a big game. They keep Carolina's explosive offense off the field with their run game, and I'm going to take Florida State in a big, big win in this one. So looking forward, moving back to the SEC, my game of the week, Georgia versus Tennessee. Who do you have in this one?
Okay, so I'm going to start with something, and then I'm going to pick my pick. Okay, if I was having my show today, I was going to start off my show with a reoccurring theme from this past weekend. Quarterbacks were making great passes, and they were catchable. But wide receivers were not doing their job. 2 examples, UGA and Jacob Eason. Jacob Eason made the most beautiful catches I have ever seen, okay? But didn't catch the ball. Tennessee and Josh Dobbs. I don't even want to talk about this Tennessee-Florida game because it was just so bad. But Josh Dobbs made these great passes, and wide receivers were not catching them. And let me make a point about Florida and Tennessee because I'm probably not going to get to on Wednesday. But between these two teams, they both played a full 4 quarters of football. Florida played the first 2 quarters, and Tennessee played the second 2 quarters. This game on Saturday, it's going to be a low-scoring game unless wide receivers and tight ends can make those catches when these quarterbacks give them these beautiful passes. Tennessee, they didn't look strong until the second half this past Saturday. They're playing between the hedges, which is not going to be easy. UGA looked really, 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 really bad this past weekend, which I knew they were going to because they were playing in Oxford. They have to prove to a lot of people that they aren't the team that they really are. Kirby Smart, what are you doing? Like, come on. You have all these Georgia fans that are super hype about you, like, making Georgia great again. This game really, I laugh at it because it really is going to go either way. Like, you really could flip a coin for it. I honestly think Tennessee's going to come away with it. Tennessee, I thought Ole Miss was going to wreck Jacob Eason, which they did. I totally called that one. Tennessee is going to light Jacob Eason up, okay? I'm going to go with Tennessee, even though it's at Georgia. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Grayson Lambert in there a little bit. That's a bold move.
I'd be very surprised to see Grayson Lambert this weekend. After what Jacob Eason has done against Missouri and just the way he stood in against Ole Miss, I would be very surprised to see Grayson Lambert.
I don't know. Maybe like one or two like plays, but I mean, Eason, I don't know, man. He like he threw really good passes, but nobody could catch them, and that's really what hurt Georgia. If like people would have caught these passes, Georgia like may have actually like maybe looked somewhat decent this past weekend, but UGA is not making me look. They're not making me think different here. So I like Tennessee. Georgia's just not feeling it. They're not having a good season.
Yeah, Jacob Eason, he dropped 3 absolute dimes in the first half of the Ole Miss game. I talked about it earlier. Stood in the face of pressure, took a hit, and threw 3 absolute dimes, 2 to Isaiah McKenzie and 1 to Terry Godwin, and they just... I don't know what they were doing. They need to get some more stickum on their gloves or something. I don't know. But back to what you said about people being hyped about Kirby Smart. I talked about this a little bit earlier, right before you came in. I think people still are hyped about Kirby Smart, but people have to understand Kirby Smart has to fix the mess that Mark Richt left at Georgia, and he left the mess in several key positions that you need to win the SEC, namely being on the offensive and defensive lines. Another key position of need being the linebacker position. We don't have linebackers that can play all 4 downs. We have play 3 downs. We have linebackers that are specialized. We have run stoppers in the middle. We have guys on the outside who rush the passer, but we don't have a lot of guys that can play sideline to sideline and do both. But looking at this weekend specifically, there's absolutely no reason to take Georgia in this one. They have struggles all over the field. You thought their secondary was strong, but I think they'll get back to being a pretty good secondary against Josh Dobbs. I think that's one area that Kirby Smart's going to work at this week. But Josh Dobbs, he didn't look good in the first half, and the reason he didn't look good in the first half is because Florida's DBs just had decent coverage. It wasn't great coverage. They weren't locking down the field. But if you make Josh Dobbs throw into spaces that a normal quarterback can throw into, he can't do it. I don't think he can. He's not that good of a passer. When you look at Josh Dobbs, the plays that he made in the second half with his arm, they were long passes that he was able to throw, and there was nobody within 10 to 15 yards of the receiver. So Josh Dobbs isn't going to hurt you with his arm. He hasn't convinced me of that yet. Now, he may come out and look like a Peyton Manning type in this game against Georgia. But, I think Jacob Eason's still the best quarterback on the field. I think if Georgia can find some semblance of a run game behind that makeshift offensive line that they have, you'll be fine against Tennessee. Tennessee should be looking to come and punch Georgia in the mouth, but I don't think they will. This is the first time Tennessee has tasted anything like success. And they're already looking at Alabama. They're already looking forward. They're already licking their chops, thinking that they're the team to beat in the SEC. And I think Kirby Smart's going to take advantage of that. They're not looking over Georgia, obviously, but I do think they're going to have a bit of a hangover. They're going to think this thing should be moderately easy. They're going to come in here, and just kick Georgia in the teeth early. But I think Jacob Eason's going to have something else to say about it. And I think Nick Chubb's going to have something to say about it too. If you remember that nasty injury he had last year. Even on a bum ankle, I think he comes into an electric Sanford Stadium and gets over 100 yards. Nick Chubb does. I think Jacob Eason has I'm going to go ahead and say he has the statement game. You say the play against Mizzou was the statement play. I think he's going to have that game against Tennessee. And, on this show, I've never picked against Georgia, and I'm not going to start right now. I'm going to say Georgia is going to start Tennessee's downward skid into SEC East nothingness for this season, because I do think they are not going to be in the SEC championship game this year. I think it's going to be Georgia or Florida, and I'm going to say Georgia's going to hand Tennessee that first loss, 34-17 between the hedges.
I don't think I would say Georgia's going to win the SEC East. It'll be Florida.
It's not over till it's over. I don't think they have the best chance either, but I do think there's still a chance. And it's a 3-horse race between Tennessee, Florida, and Georgia. And if you look at the schedules, the way the schedules lay out, Georgia has the easiest schedule of the 3 teams with their SEC games and things like that. But you have to look for upsets, obviously, and look at there's 10 million things that can happen. But I do think that Georgia is going to beat Tennessee this weekend.
We'll see. Tennessee will definitely it'll definitely be a test for Tennessee, just like Florida was a test for them, and they barely got out of that one. So it'll be a good game to watch. That is for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So the last game we're going to pick here today, Clemson and Louisville. College game day is going to be there in Death Valley in Clemson. Biggest game of the weekend as far as rankings go and standings go. Got Lamar Jackson against Deshaun Watson, 2 Heisman hopefuls for this season. Lamar Jackson, an interesting stat about him, he's in the top 10 in total passing and total rushing in the nation as of now. So that's an amazing feat. But Clemson's defense, 5th in the nation in total defense, only giving up about 11 points a game. So you kind of have that unstoppable force meeting an immovable object against coming up Saturday in Death Valley. So who do you have in this one?
This is gonna be the hardest game that Louisville plays all season until they take on Houston in November. It's in Death Valley, and I don't know how many of you people have been to Death Valley, but let me tell you, standing on that sideline is deafening because it is so loud. Like, even when I went for the South Carolina State game to go shadow my mentor, I was like, these people are so loud in the South Carolina State, and they beat them 59-0. But I don't know. Both of these teams are so good, and like you said, it's going to be Lamar Jackson versus Deshaun Watson. Lamar Jackson or Lamar Heisman, whichever one you're going for, he's really going to have to do a lot in this game to beat Clemson. It's in Clemson. It's going to be a very, very close game. Louisville's not going to light up Clemson, and Clemson is not going to light up Louisville. We can see this game coming down to the last 5 seconds, but if Lamar Jackson wants to win Heisman, which he should not even be worried about winning Heisman right now, he should really be worried about beating Clemson. He'll have to do a lot because, he's really had all these really great games. FSU, okay, yeah, they all thought FSU was going to just they thought that was going to be a good game, but it wasn't. So I like Louisville in this game just because they're this Clemson can prepare for this game as much as they want, but just like FSU prepared as much as they wanted for this game, I like Louisville though. So
yeah, definitely. I think it's hard to prepare for a team that has a playmaker as dynamic as Louisville does in Lamar Jackson. You can put tons of guys back there. Obviously, you can put DBs back there to run around, but you can't. It's hard to simulate his athleticism, his ability to dominate the game and do the things that he can do in practice. And so you really don't get a real sense of that until you're out there and you see him, in person, and you go up against him for the first time. So Clemson's defense, they're 5th in the nation in total defense, obviously, but they're not special or great or anything like that by any means, but they're still very good, I think, and they're still one of the better defenses in the nation, and they're going to test Lamar Jackson. Another tidbit I think from this game, the winner of this one is the clear number 2 in the nation, hands down. Doesn't matter what Ohio State or Michigan do this weekend. I think this team is the winner of this one's the second best team in the nation, and I think Clemson still deserves to be in the top 4. I think Louisville deserves to be in the top 4 as well after their body of work for this season. So Clemson puts up a good fight. I think it's going to come down to whoever gets the football last, and whichever quarterback can make the most plays and makes plays at the end. I love Deshaun Watson. Obviously, talked about him, raved about him before on the show, but he's not as sharp as he was last year. And Lamar Jackson, he's just doing something special this year. I think he has 25 total touchdowns through 3 or 4 games, which is just unheard of. There are probably some teams that don't have 25 total touchdowns. Louisville's getting around 65 points a game. That's best in the nation. Granted, two of those just explosions came against less than stellar teams, but one did come against Florida State. And Florida State not as good defensively as we thought, but still pretty good. So I'm gonna take Louisville in this one. Could see it going either way. Obviously, I think this one's to win this one. You're gonna have to get to 50 points, maybe first to 50 to win this football game. But I think that you're gonna have to score some points. You're gonna have to make some plays. You're gonna have to do some things, and put it all on the line. But I think Louisville wins this. I think Bobby Petrino keeps it rolling and knocks off the Clemson Tigers in Death Valley this weekend. So we're going to take one more quick break. We're going to have some Les Miles and LSU college football talk coming at you guys, and maybe get to the Falcons before we head out. Maybe not. We'll see what time does. But we'll be right back after this song. What's up, guys? We're back. We're going to talk a little bit more college football. As I mentioned earlier, LSU and Les Miles decided to go their separate ways and split up this weekend after LSU dropped a close one to Auburn this weekend in Auburn, I believe. So
it was at Auburn.
Yeah, looking at the coaching carousel, things like that. Or Les Miles specifically, where does he go next? Where do you think he's going to wind up next? He's one of the better, I think, coaches and defensive minds in the nation. Where do you think he'll wind up?
I think he'll end up at maybe a smaller, bigger school. Like someone who's obviously I honestly don't know. I'm going to be completely honest. I really did not think LSU was going to let Les Miles go. Well, I knew they were. It was just a matter of when they were going to do it.
Yeah. And
I would have thought they maybe would have waited until last season, going ahead and getting rid of him. I know there were all those rumors, but I'm not surprised, but I am surprised. LSU really should have beat Auburn. I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
A lot has happened this weekend in sports, and I'm still trying to.
Yeah, especially
cope.
With the Jose Fernandez incident. That was crazy this weekend.
And Arnold Palmer passed away last night.
Yeah, that's been crazy this weekend. But I think, he could go the Tom Herman route where he goes to, like you said, a smaller, bigger school that has some promise, and, go there and really try to build them up, bring them to national prominence. I could also see him going to be a defensive coordinator, or a defensive assistant somewhere, like hint hint Charlie Strong in Texas, going to be the defensive coordinator down there, and really make it, helping transform that defense, make it, very, very good, and just a power down there in Big 12 country. Could see. I hope he finds his way to Athens to be one of our defensive assistants. I wouldn't care. Mel Tucker, Kirby Smart could use all the help they can get there, and it just make the staff that much better. Some people say he'll be at USC. Some people say Louisville because Bobby Petrino is going to head elsewhere after this year. I doubt that.
Oh, that's not happening.
I've heard Baylor. I've also heard Auburn. I do think that Gus Malzahn is out at Auburn after this year unless he finds a way to win the SEC West, and so I could see him at Auburn as well. But one place that kind of sparks my interest, and I haven't seen this posted anywhere online, this is purely 100% from me, Georgia Tech. Paul Johnson's likely out after this year. Most people in Georgia Tech and in Atlanta and Tech fans have fallen out of love with the triple option. Les Miles has roots in recruiting. He has pipelines and connections recruiting the Southeast, and he already has. And he'd be in a hotbed right there with Atlanta on one side of him, Gwinnett County in his back door. Not to mention the rest of the state. Incredible football talent in the state of Georgia. He's 2.5 hour drive from the state line going to Florida. Can get into Alabama, into Mississippi, Tennessee, not terribly far from Ohio, can recruit really that football hotbed, can still get out to Texas if needed, but I think, Tom Herman's got that on lock, him and Charlie Strong, but, can still try to steal recruits from there if there's guys that he's interested in. He could get that Georgia Tech program back to national prominence, and Tech's ready to make moves. They hired Josh Pastner as the basketball coach, and they're not opposed to spending money to make their athletics better. So keep that out. Keep your ear out for that. I think if Georgia Tech doesn't call Les Miles, if they fire Paul Johnson and don't call Les Miles, that's a mistake. I mean, anybody who has a head coaching vacancy that doesn't give Les Miles an interview, that's a mistake. He's a very good coach. A special teams guru, defensive guru, knows so much about the game of football. So if you get him in there, get him an offensive coordinator that can really do the job. I think that can do the job and not go crazy like Cam Cameron seemed to do at times. I think that could be a good fit, and it could give Georgia fans some fits, and really the rest of the ACC. The ACC is a league that's kind of having some turnover, with Clemson coming to the top, Florida State kind of settling back to the middle, Louisville coming to the top as well. So you could see Georgia Tech really try to be a player in there if they can get a guy like Les Miles in. But looking at LSU, who do you think, real quick, I know you have to head out in a second, Jennifer, but who do you think they're going to go after next?
That I could not tell you. I really thought LSU was going to give these sport junkies maybe a little bit more time to figure out who's going to be going where. I don't think they'll bring in an SEC person, but then again, they might. Gosh, I do not know.
Yeah,
I don't even know what coaches are on the market right now. It's so early in the season still to. Yeah. Well, Miami got rid of Al Golden last year, but they had a bye week the week after, so they could kind of get their life together a little bit.
Yes, yeah.
But I honestly could not tell you.
Tom Herman sweepstakes is back open again this year. People are fighting to get him to the SEC, but if he didn't entertain Georgia last year, who I think had arguably more promise and just a better situation down there. Georgia fans were, after the Mark Richt, debacle there toward the end, I think Georgia fans were ready for a change and were willing to give some time to see this thing get rebuilt and kind of maybe do it in a better way. But I don't think he's going to head to LSU. Tom Herman's going to want LSU. He's in a tougher division. You got to see Alabama every year, and there's less talent at LSU, arguably. So, I think Houston's going to head to the Big 12 and keep Tom Herman around for a little while. But Bobby Petrino's an option. Don't think Petrino's headed out of Louisville. Jimbo Fisher, I think, is the most likely candidate to leave a school as a head coach and come to the Bayou. But one guy I think that's a solid option is Lane Kiffin. People say he will be a head coach next season, so I don't see why you don't entertain the idea of heading over there and seeing if you can rebuild roots. But my off-the-radar guy, Jeff Brom from Western Kentucky, a guy who would come in and completely change the whole thing. And I think LSU wouldn't be a bad program to see take a complete overhaul with their program, their offensive identity. If you let Dave Aranda can keep the defense, I think you'll be in good shape with him. He's a guy who's had some very good offenses up there. And also another name off the radar, but I think is a guy you got to consider if you're LSU, is Art Briles.
Yeah.
He would be a complete change of direction and philosophy, but I think, once again, like Jeff Brom, if you keep Dave Aranda and keep him over the defense, let him do his thing and build that and really get those recruits, Art Briles could be a guy to take this team and just transform the offense and make it something pretty special. So we'll definitely see with LSU going forward. I think they'll be bowl eligible. Their shot to win the SEC is gone, but they'll be bowl eligible under Ed Orgeron. Hope, if you're an LSU fan, I don't think you want him to get the job, even though it's a dream job for him. But there'll definitely be more on that going forward. We thank Jennifer once again. She's about to head out.
Yeah, so glad I could wake up with thunder this morning, even though I'm so tired, but it was so much fun. So got to go to marketing. Peace out, people.
Yeah, we thank her for coming in this morning and helping us do the show. And I'm about out of time as well, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off with you guys. Thank you for listening to me again this morning. You have heard your Monday Morning Sports Junkie, Isaiah Smith. Check me out on Twitter at 953_highlight. We'll be back with you guys next Monday. I think we have one more Monday to be with you guys before fall break, so we're definitely looking forward to that, hoping that that'll be a good time and we can we can get some things done, get some things discussed there. Hopefully we'll have a great slate of games to talk about next weekend, and we can preview maybe 2 weeks into the future after that. But thank you guys once again for listening. This is WGUR 95.3 The Noise, broadcasting live from Milledgeville, Georgia. We have some Major Lazer with Cold Water coming at you guys. Hope you have a great week. Have a good Monday, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week.
Everybody gets high sometimes, you know.